This is what I learned creating pixel art for 42 out of the 70 total enemies in my rhythm game, Rogue Rhythm, which you can wishlist now on Steam. And so there are different sets of themes of levels in my game. The first theme is Cave that you're seeing now. As you can see, I tried to keep the shading extremely simple if there is any at all, and I mostly tried to get the shapes down so that they made sense. And all of the normal enemies that you see are 16 by 16 pixels, and the bosses are 32 by 32 pixels. The second theme is Nature, and this one's pretty similar with the mostly flat shading. However, for the boss, I tried to use a few different tones. For the first time, I used a different color instead of black for the outline and the darkest parts of the sprite. I think there's a general improvement, but then we move on to the water stage. And I think here you can actually see how the shapes are improving from before, maybe not the shading, because I was still trying to consciously use, trying not to use too much shading, because I felt like if I kept it simple, it just looked better just because of how inexperienced I was. And I was also afraid that if I started to use more shading, it would mix well with the rest of the enemies that I had already done. But the thing is that I'm creating this game over the course of many months, and I was probably going to be getting better at pixel art, but like, how was I just going to keep the same flat shading from the beginning and try to mimic it for the rest? Let's see. So then I did the fourth theme, which is Desert, and you can see that this one has two recolors from the earlier enemies. The worm I think you saw before, and the golem, which is a sand golem now. I think you can also see some improvement here, especially with the vulture shading. You can see I just went for it with the shading. The way that I did the mummy, I think I let myself get a little bit creative. It got a little messy with it, and I like the form of the mummy as well here. The boss on this one is pretty bad, probably because I went back to my old ways of trying not to shade anything. We go to the fifth theme, which is Dungeon, so it includes the classic dungeon enemies like a Mimic, which I actually think this might be my best monster sprite up until this point. And another thing I like about this is how cohesive I was starting to make some of the forms. For example, the skeleton, the zombie, and the adventurer here. They're all based on the mummy from before. And I used that same form, and I think it works really well with their shape and how much it makes it look like they belong together. And then the sixth theme out of the 10 total themes in my game is Cult. So this includes the Haunted Mirror, the Dark Priest, the Cultist, Warlock, Demon Spawn, Voodoo Doll, and the boss is the Summon. So I will admit I did get some advice from a pixel artist, but really not that much, so I'm pretty proud of this. You can see how much I just straight up abandoned trying not to shade, and I just went all in with it. And maybe this looks too out of place from the previous monsters, especially from the early ones if you look back, but I mean, it is a different theme and it's a different set of monsters at a later point in the game, and they are kind of supposed to be different. I also think that since this is my first medium big size game, it's kind of cool that you can see some changes in the art as the game progresses, since I'm making the game over the course of many months, as I said. And plus, I think it also gives it another creepy factor since it's the cult theme. Just because when you first experience it, these enemies are so different from the previous ones. I think it's just another thing that keeps the game interesting. So yeah, follow to see my journey of creating games until I literally die and stop posting.